In a new report by More Perfect Union, we've learned that an organization, a conservative organization known as the Alliance for Defending Freedom, sounds like a great name, is basically now working to use the Supreme Court to dismantle our public education system by diverting funding for public schools to voucher programs. Now, the voucher program might seem favorable to a lot of parents, especially because public schools aren't doing so well in certain districts, in certain states, and I totally understand that. But we need to think long-term about what that means. Diverting the money to vouchers means that the money then goes to private schools, oftentimes religious schools. And eventually, if more and more funding gets taken out of the public education system and public schools no longer exist, do we really think that there will be allocation for vouchers in order for parents to send their kids to whatever school they want at no cost to them? Something to keep in mind. But with that said, let's give you the details about this More Perfect Union report. Now, you might not be familiar with this organization, Alliance for Defending Freedom, or ADF, but you're certainly familiar with their work because they're behind several Supreme Court rulings, which shows you how successful they've been in the past. Let's watch.
Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF, was launched in 1994 by leaders in the Christian right community.
We've been duped into believing that somehow you can separate your Christianity, your religion, from what's going on in the country politically, and you cannot. They're intertwined.
Today, it's a nearly $100 million operation with a single goal. We are here to keep the door open for the gospel.
They were obviously the lawyers behind the recent 303 Creative versus Ellen's case, which upended decades of civil rights protections for LGBTQ Americans.
So to see the kind of ruling we got was just an answer to prayer.
They also brought the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado case around the baker who wanted to deny service to same-sex couples who were getting married.
I'm Michael Ferris. I'm the president and general counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom that defended Jack today.
They were behind the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, and they're obviously not stopping there.
We want Roe versus Wade reversed, but that's just kind of a huge milestone along the path to becoming a pro-life nation.
And now this, where they've sued to remove one of the most popular abortion pills from the market nationwide.
So that really gives you a sense of how successful they've been in the past, and this is what strategy looks like. It would be nice to see a little bit of that on the left. Obviously, there are funding issues on the left when it comes to these types of strategic maneuvers. But with that said, now their focus is on using the conservative Supreme Court to help them dismantle public schools through increasing voucher programs, okay? So let's talk about how they plan on doing that. So Documented obtained audio of Michael Ferris, who was the then CEO and general counsel of ADF, explaining the plan at an official, a plan to an official, I should say, at like this shadowy organization known as Ziklag. Have you heard of Ziklag before?
I gotta be honest, I haven't even heard of Ziklag.
They got it. Look, I know it's someone's last name and that's why they named it Ziklag. Not a great name, do better. But nonetheless, so Nick Sergey, who's the executive director of Documented, describes Ziklag as an organization that channels money to projects on the right. Now, the Washington Post called it a group devoted to expanding Christian influence over American culture and government. And membership in Ziklag, named after a town in the Bible that David used to organize raids against enemies of the ancient Israelites, is restricted to people with a net worth of at least 25 million, according to a page on Ziklag's website that was viewed by the Post but has since been made private. So my bad, it actually doesn't have to do with someone's last name, it has to do with a reference in the Bible. But nonetheless, this is what their goal is. And keep in mind, like there's the other element of this outside of decimating public schools and moving to a fully private model, which would essentially divert public money to religious organizations, which should be unconstitutional, but it's currently happening in various jurisdictions across the country as we speak.
So look, it's a free country, and but there's, so on the one hand, I understand these guys organize tons of money, and a lot of the super rich in this country are very religious. and not just religious, but fundamentalist, right? So they call themselves pro-life. We call them anti-choice, but either way, that's their genuine view. So they take some of their money and then they give some of it. And in one case, the guy gave over $1 billion, and they just give it to these groups, and they go use the money and make the country ours and not theirs. Do it any way you can. Now they have a giant problem. It's democracy. The country's pro-choice. No matter where you vote, and this has already happened, Kansas, Kentucky, Montana, etc., they vote pro-choice. And it's about 7 out of 10 Americans that are pro-choice. So they're like, well, how can we do it? Well, this way lost the Supreme Court earlier because of activist judges. In this case, they love the activist judges when they make bribery legal.
Of course.
Right?
Right.
So they're like, oh, we'll go back to the judges, right? We kind of like that they're activists. In fact, Lewis Powell wrote the famous memo that I mentioned in chapter 4, Justice is Coming, where he said we should create activist judges to rule in favor of corporations. And in this case, they're like, oh, why don't we have them rule in favor of fundamentalist religion as well, right? So it's easier and more efficient to spend the money buying off the courts than it is to buy off democracy. We do that too, but that costs a pretty penny.
Yeah,
right?
and look, those investments certainly pay dividends.
Yes.
And so, one major issue after the next, we're seeing the conservative wing of our political spectrum really succeed in getting what they want. And it was a long-term goal. It literally took decades to get to where we are today. And look, in regard to religious schools, you should look into what Paul Weyrich, he was the founder of the, what was it, the moral majority? He was the one who essentially made Roe v. Wade such a big issue and wanted to fight to reverse it, but that wasn't really his number one cause. His number one cause was to ensure that private religious institutions, schools that were refusing to desegregate would be able to maintain their tax cuts, their tax benefits. When the Nixon administration said, no deal, we're not going to allow you to continue to take advantage of these tax deductions and benefits, that's when Paul Weyrich got really upset and tried to find some issue to galvanize the religious right. And he did a great job galvanizing them, and he did it through the abortion issue. Yeah. But at the heart of what motivated him was essentially ensuring that there was protection for these religious institutions. So that was really the seed that unfortunately blossomed into what we're experiencing now. And I think that it's okay for parents to have issues with the public education system. I do think that there are flaws in the public education system as we speak, right? And when you look at the reading levels, their performance in math, it's just, we're not in a good situation. However, decimating public education, which is supposed to be available to everybody, and moving toward a privatized model is gonna be absolutely disastrous. I mean, if you think student loan debt is bad now, imagine living in a society where public education isn't even an option. And that's honestly the ultimate goal for organizations like this one. But then the other part of it is also ideological. On one hand, they'll complain about schools indoctrinating children, public schools indoctrinating children. On the other hand, they will fight tooth and nail to create a system in which religious institutions are indoctrinating children.
Yeah, so look, California and Finland are excellent examples. So in California, we used to have one of the best public school systems in the country. And then a law was passed limiting taxes that could go to the schools. And so it drained funding from the schools in a way that decimated them. And now California has one of the worst public school systems in the country because we just couldn't put money into it. And then it became a vicious cycle because as the public schools started to wane a little bit because of the lack of funding, private schools popped up, and the private schools spent a giant amount of money. So all the rich people went put their kids into private schools. And now those private schools, even at elementary school level, cost $60,000 a year for like a second grader. It's insane, okay? But all the rich kids are in the private schools. Those are the best in the country. The public schools are now one of the worst in the country. They drained everything out of the public school system and gave it basically over to the rich, okay? Now Finland did the exact opposite. They banned private schools. And the educational system here in America, and I know some folks that are in education, people were very skeptical, right? And we're like, that's crazy. You can't ban private schools. That takes freedom away. No, what happened? Finland went to #1 in the world in education. And now people in the education system in America are beginning to go, oh my God, they were right. So Finland did a lot of different things that worked, including valuing teachers and paying them a lot more. But the #1 thing, it appears, is that once you put rich kids in the public schools, then rich parents go, we got to make those schools really good. We got to make them really good. Okay.
Of course, you're now very much invested in the success of these schools.
Exactly. Once you take rich people out of the school systems, they're going to destroy it for the rest of you. They're going to suck out all of the money. Okay. So this voucher system is a way to do that, to make income inequality permanent. Right? And so why do you think that Ziklag group only allows for people with private net worth above $25 million? If you're a scrub and you only have $24 million, they don't even let you in.
That's right, yep.
So this is not just about religion. It's also about
power.
Power and keeping you in your place.
That's a great point. Now, I just want to go to a few other snippets from this More Perfect Union report because Ziklag's education chair, his name is Peter Bollinger, made some statements during a call in regard to what their strategy is. You should hear about it. Let's watch.
And the fundamental change is to force, via a Supreme Court decision, a constitutionally mandated school voucher system. For an investment of a few $1 million, we can literally and potentially shift the flow of approximately $750 billion of education funds.
That call was from June of 2021, and that amount of money, $750 billion, taking that out of the public education system and funneling it to private religious institutions would clearly lead to the collapse of public schools.
Yeah, and they want that. So then when you go back to religious schools, #1, they're gonna make a ton of money off of it, both religious and private schools. There's a whole industry waiting to rob you, right? #2, it gives religion more power, so the fundamentalists are thrilled about it. But look at what he is saying there. And this is the heart of chapter 4, the chapter I keep telling you guys about, Injustice is Coming, right? And he's repeating what Lewis Powell said in the 1971 memo that they executed to privatize our elections. They privatized the financing of our politicians, and now our politicians serve private interests. And basically he said, with just a couple of $1 million, we can move billions of dollars. And here they are again, saying the same exact thing. With just a couple of $1 million, we can move $750 billion. This is why corruption works. Because just couple of million in bribes gets you billions and trillions in return. We have to end the bribes. If we don't end the bribes, this is what you're gonna get. So, and when they privatize the school system, they're gonna do just as much damage as when they privatized the political financing system in this country. So this is nothing but devastation ahead for us, where this few fundamentalist crackpot, super wealthy people destroy our entire system, and most importantly, destroy equality of opportunity so that all of our kids have a shot.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.